The Line Between Leaving and Staying by Omid Farzan. My name is Omid Farzan, and this is the closest thing to a full account of my life I'll ever give. It's not heroic, not tragic in the cinematic sense, and not decorated with romance or destiny. It's just the truth, shaped by the kind of days that don't make headlines, but shape a man slowly, like wind carving a rock over decades. I grew up in a narrow, uneven street where afternoons were always dusty and mornings always loud. The sound that marked my childhood wasn't a school bell or a neighbor's laughter. It was an old flower seller's voice. Every dawn he shouted the same line, his tone always half awake, half hopeful. I didn't understand why someone would buy flowers so early, but I understood this. His voice meant the world was still turning. Stability, even if borrowed from a stranger, was something I needed more than I admitted. My father left when I was 12. No fight, no warning, not even a note. He left like a man stepping out for bread. I waited for him the entire first day. By the second day, I pretended not to. By the end of the month, I realized waiting was another way of refusing to accept reality. As a boy, I thought he might have been taken by some force. War, accident, anything tragic enough to justify the emptiness. As a man, I know now the truth was simpler. Some men run from responsibility, not because the world is cruel, but because they are weak.
My mother handled his absence the way she handled most burdens, quietly. She didn't curse him. She just shrank into herself, as if conserving energy for survival. I remember walking into the kitchen one night and seeing her hold her chest, struggling to breathe, but still insisting she was fine. I learned early that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers, because shouting would take too much effort. At school, I was invisible. Not the brilliant kid teachers remember, not the troublemaker they fear, just the boy who sat in the middle row, did enough to pass, and went home without leaving an impression. But inside, my mind was a crowded place. Dreams, doubts, fears, all competing, none victorious. What I did have was curiosity. I loved taking things apart. Radios, fans, toy cars, anything with screws. My uncle once joked that if I ever ran out of broken gadgets, I'd start dismantling the house. He wasn't entirely wrong. I wasn't doing it for attention or ambition. I did it because understanding how things worked felt like solving a private puzzle the world had left for me. But in my environment, dreams had rules. Be a doctor, be an engineer, be anything that makes money. Fixing broken electronics wasn't considered a future. It was considered a hobby or a sign of boredom. So I buried it. I studied for the university exam because that's what boys my age were expected to do, not because I believed in the path.
Passed, barely. My mother said she was proud, and maybe she was, but her pride was threaded with fear. Not fear for me, fear of a future she couldn't afford. University was eye-opening in the worst way. I felt behind. Everyone around me argued confidently about politics and history. I was still trying to figure out where I fit. I kept to myself until one day in an electrical engineering lab, the instructor handed out malfunctioning circuits. Most students stared at them as if he had given them ancient relics. I didn't think. I just started working. Within minutes, I found the loose connection and fixed it. The professor approached me, adjusted his glasses, and asked where I learned to do that. I said, at home. He looked at me like I was finally visible. For the first time, someone outside my house acknowledged something I was good at. That moment didn't transform my life instantly, but it cracked something open inside me. I started fixing my classmates' projects, quietly at first, then openly. They thought I was confident. I wasn't. I was just doing the one thing that didn't make me feel like an imposter. Then my mother got sick. It began with fatigue, then coughing, then medical bills. Doctors gave names that sounded expensive, even before they explained the treatment. I tried to stay focused on school, But fear is heavy. When you carry it long enough, it bends your priorities.
I took a part-time job repairing appliances in a small shop. The owner didn't ask for a diploma, just proof I could fix things. I did. The work kept us afloat, barely. But one night he locked the shop and never returned, left the country without warning. You'd think I'd be shocked, but I wasn't. Men leaving without explanation was a pattern in my life. Money got tighter. My mother insisted I stay in school, but I saw the strain every time she stood up slowly or reached for her medicine. I dropped out quietly, not because I didn't want a degree, but because I refused to watch her suffer while I chased a dream borrowed from someone else. I began repairing electronics from home. It started small, neighbors, cousins, then strangers who heard about the young guy who fixes anything. I liked the work. It wasn't prestigious, but it was honest. And importantly, it was mine. Every device I revived made me feel like the world was slightly less chaotic. Months passed. One evening, a man I barely knew brought a burnt-out radio. I fixed it while he watched silently. Before leaving, he said there was a workshop across town looking for someone like me. I thought he was joking, but he wasn't.
That workshop became my second home. I repaired phones, radios, generators, anything that hummed, buzzed, or clicked. The pay wasn't great, but I wasn't chasing luxury. I was chasing stability, something I had never seen in my own household. My mother slowly recovered. Not fully, but enough to move around without fear. Enough to smile when I handed her medicine she no longer worried we could afford. Years blurred. I gained a reputation, not for genius, but for reliability. Customers said I didn't cheat. That mattered to me more than being called talented. Then, one morning, the workshop owner told me he was retiring. He offered to sell me the place for half its value. His exact words were, "You don't lie. That's rare. I'd rather leave this place to someone who stays." It took me a week to gather the money, but I did. Owning the shop changed me. Not dramatically. No big celebration, no ribbon cutting. Just a quiet sense of control. I repainted the walls, fixed the shelves, organized tools. I made the place functional, simple, and honest, like the life I was building. Business grew slowly but steadily. I didn't need more. Yesterday, a boy around 11 came into my shop with a broken toy car. He watched me work, fascinated, asking questions.
Once asked myself, he reminded me of who I used to be, curious, uncertain, searching. Before leaving, he asked, "How did you learn all this?" I told him the truth. When life breaks things around you long enough, you either learn to run or you learn to fix what you can. He didn't fully understand, but one day he will. And that's where my story ends. Not in triumph, not in tragedy, but in clarity. My father left. I stayed. And sometimes, staying is enough to build a life worth living.